welcome to Painted Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. We take more time than other editorial boards, but we stand behind our methodology, so much so that we're going to share our process with you through this podcast. So welcome. Today we have fiction, and we have a huge crew. I'm loving it. It's raining in Philly, and we made everybody start late, but I'm going to start in Philadelphia right now, and I'll start with myself because that's just who I am. So I'm Kathleen Volk-Miller, and I'm director of the publishing program here at Drexel and co-editor of PBQ, and I'm an essayist and have worked recently in the Washington Post and a collection from Oprah and various places. So Google about, you'll find me. To my right is Denise. She comes to a lot of our fiction podcasts.
I'm Denise Guerin, and I've been with Painted Bread Quarterly for almost a year on the editing staff. And I'm a photographer by day and trying to put some words together by night.
And I'm Tim Fitz, and I teach here at Drexel University, and I'm a novelist and short story writer. My novel, The Soju Club, just came out this week in South Korea as a Korean translation.
Woohoo!
And I have a short story collection coming out in the spring with Mad Hat Press.
Woohoo!
And to my right is Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Pickett. I am a third-year English major at Drexel University, and I'm the current editorial assistant for PBQ.
Double woohoo! Okay, we have three people coming remotely, and in keeping with my always loving something new and different, not only do we have 7 people involved in today's conversation, but it's the first time for Maureen McVeigh. Hey, Maureen.
Hi.
Maureen is also known as my quirk wife, and that's only because we have lived together in Ireland for a couple summers teaching there. And that's how we got to know one another. And now I'm very glad that she's on the PBQ team.
Thank you. Today feels a little bit like Cork outside.
Yeah.
Sadly, we are in Pennsylvania. I teach English and creative writing at Westchester University. And I primarily write fiction, but I just started writing some creative nonfiction. And luckily, I know you, Kathleen, for advice when I need it.
Yeah, and I don't know if we should go all the way to Marion in Abu Dhabi or Jason in New York.
Greetings from Abu Dhabi. It is about 8:20 in the evening, and it is pitch black outside, and Abu Dhabi looks beautiful from a distance. We're looking at 2 days in advance of National Day here in Abu Dhabi, where the entire city erupts in fireworks and silly string. Cars are encrusted with gold glitter and faces of the sheikh, and it's a wild, wild party. I'm Maureen Wren. I am co-editor of Painted Bread Quarterly, and I run the writing program here at NYU in Abu Dhabi.
Awesome.
And hi, I'm Jason. I am in Brooklyn today, and I'm actually not at my yellow Parsons table. I am at my mother's antique secretary desk. So that's kind of exciting. The key got lost in shipping, so it was locked closed, but I found a key. So now I can.
Oh, that sounds like a poem. That sounds like a poem.
Right? Well, that's the problem with it. It sounds too much like a poem. Like it's actually it's one of those things where it's a metaphor. You're locked out of your mother's desk.
Yeah, when it was locked out, I was very sad that you found the key.
I found the key.
That's profound.
Right. So, but it doesn't really need any work. Like there's nothing for me to do to write the poem.
Yeah. That's what I
and I come to you from the New York staff.
Awesome. Where did you put that desk? What room is it in?
It is in the office/library/guest room.
Where you got rid of my comfy bed.
Where I got rid of your comfy bed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
It's a really nice bed.
All right. I'll just have to sit at the desk someday. All right. So today we are discussing one short story by Alex Pickett. It's called Vultures, and it is on our PBQ pages. If you would like to go and read it, we'll wait for you. Cracks me up. How come nobody else laughs when I do
You can't wait the entire time. Yeah.
I thought I think that's just
They
so
can just
freaking
press
fun.
pause and come back to when they're finished.
Oh, yeah, I know. So you can go read it, press pause, or listen to us talk about it and then go read it, because you'll probably want to read it after we talk about it, I think. So basically, the premise of this is a man named Paul works for Parks and Rec as kind of like a maintenance sort of person, and he's on a mission today to go plow in Denali. They're up in Alaska. And then a series of misadventures occur. Not a series, a misadventure occurs. Marion, I know that you've said, and I think it's such a great idea to read a little bit of it. And I actually thought about a section that I would like to read.
Oh, yeah. What are you thinking?
Everybody. The top of my page 2, starting with "She laughed."
Yes.
Okay, just a few graphs there. So, so do you think that's enough to get rolling, the basic premise? All right. And I said our protagonist, Paul, is on his way to Denali, and he picks up a hitchhiker. All right, that's what you need to know before you even hear this. All right, now the story. She laughed, took off her cap. Paul wanted to look and see what her hair did with the cap off, but instead he took his hands off the wheel of the truck, tipped the ash of his cigarette into his palm, and put the ashes into his pocket of his coveralls. They weren't supposed to smoke in the truck. The woman grabbed the wheel when Paul did this, but she didn't steer much. Paul didn't take notice. She moved as though this gesture was a normal thing between them. He drove past Paul's favorite spot on this route. Trees on both sides of the highway had been cut away, so there was about 50 yards of stumps in both directions for a half-mile stretch of road. He imagined sitting there in his truck with fires on each side of him, knowing he was safe. In the summer, Paul thought it looked like a bed of nails because the stumps were so thin. He told this to the hitchhiker. "Bed of nails," the hitcher said. "Can't see it." "The hell knows, though, covered in snow. Covered like it is, looks more like gravestones." Good? Okay, so there we are. So that kind of sets you up to the point of view that we're in and some of the flavor of the piece, I think. So what do we think?
I really enjoyed the story. I think it's really well structured. The humiliations that Paul suffers never seem gratuitous. They seem like really organic to who he is. I love the relationship between him, particularly, and the coworkers.
Yeah.
And kind of this desire to get away with something, to be, right? I mean, there's this sort of like this way that they have him set up where he can never win. And he's just trying to kind of make something happen that will give him a feeling of being special. And it's just really hard to achieve that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this story is pretty remarkable in that when I first started to read it, I wasn't really impressed because Paul is absolutely mediocre.
There's more than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then by the end of the story, you kind of you sympathize with Paul, and I don't know, you hope the best for him, and you know he's not going to have that. So I don't know, it leaves you wanting.
Yeah. Paul is a sad sack sort of guy.
Yeah.
And I think, Jason, what the backstory that we get, I mean, we hear about his wife, doesn't seem good, right? And we get even more details with the coworkers who gang up together to mock him quite frequently, right? And pull pranks and scare him with snakes and, pathetic. He probably would be in the dictionary under pathetic.
It's
right?
funny. I think to me, it felt like, yes, absolutely, he's pathetic. But he's such a mark. And kind of you see that happening with the coworkers and then how beautifully it mirrors the hitchhiker and her friend Tuffy, I think his name was.
Yeah.
And how he just can't get past being a mark, and you see that in his inner life as well. And it kind of, I loved the ending where he's literally trying to hold on to his balls.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So
Wow. I
Yeah.
really didn't think about that.
It's
He's
on the
literally
third-
holding on to
the
his
third
balls.
reading is when it really got me,
Wow.
where
Yeah.
that's all he's trying to do. And even him, I don't want to get to the end too quickly, so I'll mention it as we kind of go through the story, what I thought at the end.
Okay.
What do you mean by mark?
Like Mark, like somebody that is available to take advantage of, and he is very unaware of it, and he almost tries. You can see him trying so hard to be a part of it, and and that's what I really liked about his inner dialogue. We really could see the inner working of his mind and how this happens to him again and again.
Yeah.
And you feel that what is going to happen, whatever, between this woman and her friend is not something good. Nothing good is going to come of that.
So, Denise, I want to jump in and say I really like the use of the word mark here, right? Because in some ways, part of the tension of the story is the way this unfolds in this way that you are rooting for him. You hope he's going to be making smart choices. He winds up making really bad choices and then being really vulnerable to some, not so nice people, some shady folks, right? And it's that feeling of precarity and vulnerability that is kind of excruciating as the story unfolds, right? I found myself really sort of painfully aware of how vulnerable this guy is, even as he's making his own choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as he winds up in the predicament that he's in, clutching his balls, right, and trying to hold it together. He's been on the edge of violence the whole way. He's been on the edge of catastrophe, including the prank that he plays on his coworkers, right? They make him believe that it's gone much more drastically badly than it actually has, and that adds that sense of catastrophic suspense.
And I thought I'll have to bring it up now because it kind of goes perfectly with what you said. You kind of, as he ends the story, that he's eventually going to tell them about what happened, and somehow Paul sees some sort of heroic quality in it, and that's not how that's going to be perceived. It's just, this is going to follow him forever if he exposes himself, and that made me very sad for Paul.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like there's a self-awareness and a lack of it in there,
Yeah.
He knows he's not going to tell them immediately, but he does want to tell them one day because he's really psyched that he held on to those keys.
And,
right?
Yeah.
and I do think it's heroic that he holds on to the keys.
I do too.
I
do too.
I
It's
do.
very easy to let her have the keys.
And I think that, like, in that moment, he's also it's about Paul discovering his own value system and grounding himself, and he's no longer beholden to their perspective, because it doesn't matter what their perspective. Like in this scene where he's doing this one thing at great personal cost, he's doing it because he's embracing his own value system, and it's I don't know. I love the way that he sort of emerges this, and yes, like we totally know that this is there's no way out of the humiliation, but there's also no way out of his having made a choice that he's stuck through.
Yeah. Maureen and Tim, you haven't breathed a word.
Well, I'm really interested in this because I feel very mixed on this. I really enjoyed reading parts of it, and then I got to the end and I felt like I wasn't completely sold on it. And usually I can articulate very clearly why I enjoy something or why I don't. And I can't for this one. So I was really interested in hearing what everyone else had to say. Mm-hmm. So I could maybe say, oh yeah, I agree with that. Or, oh no, I don't agree with that. So I am really on the fence. I love the setting of this piece and how the writer handles it. And the characters are very natural. And I hate using the word realistic when talking about fiction. It seems like something that people just use as a go-to, but I just felt like, yeah, these characters, I could know them. They make sense. There was nothing that took me out of the story.
Right.
So I feel very mixed about it.
I sort of feel the same way, where there's so many things I like about it on the way to the end. There's a couple of notes that I thought were a little obvious. Like the guy's name Tuffy kind of bothered me a little bit. It didn't bother, it wasn't a deal breaker for me.
Excuse me 1 second, even though it's spelled Tuffy.
Yeah.
I think that helps for me.
And having him hold his balls just seemed like it seemed like an ending there's like 5 or 6 ways it could have ended, and it ended one of those 5 or 6 ways. And I didn't feel like, I just wasn't moved by the ending where the truck getting smashed and then he holds on to the keys. I guess I wasn't moved by it. I wasn't surprised in a way where I liked other things. Like some details I really liked was how he has this affection for plowing the parking lot in Denali. Those are the types of things that women are going in at those types. So for instance, I feel throughout the whole story this constant yearning to get to that parking lot. I feel that all the way through.
Safe, like uncomplicated.
Yeah, the order in which he plows, he has a whole little system. It's one thing he can control.
Yeah.
Right?
But I didn't feel the constant irritation of his hemorrhoid. I knew he had prep age, but prep age for me is not a very easy, like preparation age is easier on your mouth than actually prep age. So when you see prep age, it's kind of a speed bump for me.
That was bothering you?
Yeah.
There may be people on editorial staff that loved the prep age.
Well,
there may be.
There might be.
Okay, I have to intervene. What I love is that phrase that you just used, that prep H is easier on your mouth.
No, preparation H is easier on your mouth.
That's
prep
right.
H is harder on your mouth.
Preparation H. So it's funny to be thinking about this, discussing the story as if it's like an oral text rather than a written text, because Tim, I have to say, the Tuffy bit, the name made me laugh and giggle in the way that Pussy from The Sopranos makes me sort of giggle, right? I totally didn't get that Tuffy as in tough guy would be how that sounds until you said it out loud. So, thank you.
Maybe that's what I meant about the spelling. The spelling.
Yeah, exactly.
Of Tuffy,
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
But it's also like, I mean, it's so I mean, these are terrible cons, right? I mean, these guys who are trying to con him out of this, I mean, they're doing a terrible job. I mean, they're like the worst con people ever. And like, I mean, not the worst ever, but I think that Tuffy is precisely the sort of like aspirational name that you expect from these not terribly successful scammers.
So,
Right.
Yeah, and they're also alike with the coworkers, right? Like everybody is just doing what they can to break out of the monotony of their lives at times, right? Mm-hmm. Let's put a rubber snake in Paul's desk drawer. Well, I can see them too.
At the beginning of George Orwell's Coming Up for Air, he gets out of the tub and his day starts and he realizes he's not sure if we washed all the soap off of his neck. So you get this, for 10 or 15 pages, you get this constant reminder of this itchy feeling that makes you itch and so you have a very clear image of this discomfort. Now, Pickett's going towards this even better possible image, which is the hemorrhoid is not just how uncomfortable the hemorrhoid is, it's a specific type of embarrassing image that you have to suffer with. So I know he has it, but it seems like Pickett doesn't want to fully describe how the hemorrhoid feels. And that needs to be in there to have this constant pain the whole way through there.
If he's going to keep referencing the prep age, you want to know more about the hemorrhoid.
Mentioning so much, is it like
I'm just clarifying?
Does does it last like 10? He's like a prep age junkie. He's gotta go in the bathroom every 15 minutes.
Well, he's nervous as hell.
Yeah,
Putting that prep age on is almost like a nervous tick.
That's what I thought, because he had to go and do it after he got a phone call. Like, it was more a psychological pain than maybe a pain that he was actually distracted by. And he had to go. He got the phone call and had to go in the bathroom and put it on.
And he telegraphs that ball clutch like a rookie quarterback. He's looking at the receiver way downfield. The whole story, he's looking at that whole scene in the bathroom. I could see that coming from a mile away. By page 6 or 7, you think, at the end he's going to be in the bathroom holding his balls and a girl's going to walk in. I just felt like,
really?
Yeah, I totally.
Well,
I wasn't
much more prescient than me, but I did not get.
I felt like there's so much I like about the story, and I feel like if let's say if this story has 20 drafts, I feel like it's probably on like 17, and the next one is going to be the money draft. I feel like what it could. So I'm sort of I do like the story, and I like the voice, and I like a lot of the images. I just feel like that, like maybe if we cook it just like 10 minutes longer, something else is going to happen.
You're very patient that way.
I do agree that you're told that he has the hemorrhoid, that you don't feel it in the way that you feel his desire to plow Denali, or the kind of you feel the way that he's being beaten down by the coworkers.
And it's embarrassing pain too. So that's got to be the one that really sort of has him gripped, right?
Yeah, you're right, because I want to feel that he's going to run from that phone call because he's completely hurting and distracted and ashamed.
And I bet 3 sentences fixes it.
Yeah.
I bet a couple sentences.
Yeah.
Like when you go to the doctor's office, they're like, "How does it hurt? Give me the shape. Give me this. Like, give me the. They say, "Oh, like, tell me the shape of it. Tell me the severity. Tell me the color." And you're like, "I don't know." And you're like, "Oh yeah, this is what it's like." And then they tell you what it is. They're like, "Oh, you got a stub toe," or whatever. But this is embarrassing pain. That's the great thing about this image is we get to see him suffer this humiliation, which is what, because that's the humiliation that nobody knows about him. He has to suffer layer upon layer upon layer of humiliation.
But he told his coworkers about the prep age. And the wife, who doesn't seem very nice in any other way, makes sure she gets him new tubes, right? And he's even ashamed in his own private bathroom at home when she leaves it on the counter. But it's her way of showing him she bought him more.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to say something that's very KVM to say, but I feel like at the end, even though I agree with you, Sarah, that this man is a sad sack and he's never going to be quite the hero, I have a little bit of optimism at the end there. Not that his life is going to change, but there's something about the fact that the coworker called and left that voicemail with real concern in his voice about whether he was okay. I think that makes Paul feel good, And those last lines, maybe a few years from now, I'll tell them all about all this, even the prep age. Tell them how she grabbed my balls like that, how I held on to the keys, how the truck was fine, just broken up a little, and how I went up and plowed and came back and everything was all right. I guess that's what I'm left with, right? There's another line, but everything was all right.
I feel like that ending kind of means nothing really happened, though. I think that was part of my problem with the ending. It's like earlier it says, "This will pass and I'll go up and plow." It's like, they aren't going to come back. All these lines of like, why did I just read the last 16 pages if there's nothing really different now at the end? Like, I don't know. I felt like all that build up and really it's like, meh.
Well, you know what? I think what happened was huge.
But he's saying that it's not.
Because he's desperate to get back to his mundanity. Is that the word? Mundanity. Mundanity.
Okay.
That same life why did he even pick her up in the first place? Because his life is what his life is, right? So he takes that risk, picks her up, makes the decision to take her off route, makes the decision to go in and drink beers, right? He's trying to make something happen in his life. But what does happen sucks. It's horrible.
But it's, I don't know. I guess I didn't
get right back.
Get that. Yeah. I can see I see that, but I don't know. It was almost like it says, it was cold out and Paul liked company. Like he just kind of picked her up because it's Alaska and it's snowing and she's a hitchhiker. I don't know.
Well, he picked her up because he wanted to sleep with her.
I have a
And again,
question.
because he was bored with his life.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because he didn't know she was a woman when he first decided to pick her up. I mean, that might be why he kept going with her, but it was more just like, why not? Sort of like I don't get that he's desperate, like you said. It's sort of like with the Prep H thing. I don't feel the desperation of that. I can read that, but I don't feel it necessarily.
No, I don't think picking up the hitchhiker is a desperate act. I think that fell into his lap. He didn't go looking for it. This man, you know what I mean, went off route on his own. That would be different. He wouldn't have if she wasn't just happened to be by the side of the road. His life happens to him. You know what I mean? So this happened.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if he goes off route and the truck gets smashed up, is he going to have to pay for the damages?
He said he's going to lie.
He's going to lie. Okay.
Yeah.
Not going to be stuck like having to be like.
He's not going to say it happened in that bar
The
parking
only
lot.
thing he has to explain is the smashed window.
Believe him?
Well, he's going to say it happened at a different rest stop, like on the route, right?
Yeah. So he's got to come.
On the route, right?
I feel like either this is the moment at the end where he has kind of released from paying his dues, the humiliation, or it's the moment where he realizes this is going to continue for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's up to the reader to figure out which.
Can I read a passage from page 6?
Yeah.
Would love it.
Okay. So this is where he's trying to decide if he's going to take the turn or not to kind of play hooky or to go forward. So it starts at the bottom of page 5. The turn was in 5 miles. As he drove, he wondered why he wasn't taking her up there. Did he think he'd get caught, or was it because he just wasn't supposed to? He knew other people did worse things. He talked to people in other districts who bragged about smoking pot in the truck, or taking the truck down to strip clubs in Anchorage. The more he thought about it, the more taking her up there didn't seem like such a bad idea. The chair prank made him want to avoid getting done plowing in time to return to the office, and he thought how even though she's trying to trick him into taking her, she still was in a bad spot and needed his help. And sure, that is, picking up a woman hitchhiking was a top 5 sexual fantasy for him, since he picked up so many hitchers, and so felt achieving it was a real possibility, even if he didn't plan on ever cheating on his wife. Not that he was attracted to this woman, with her frozen cheeks and crooked nose, but she was a woman. Sex aside, though, it wasn't right to leave her in the cold, and he probably wouldn't get in any trouble anyway, and even if nothing happens, he can at least think about what might have happened the next time he has sex with his wife. Without saying anything, only sighing and shifting uncomfortably in his seat, Paul decided to take her where she wanted to go. Like, I love that inner monologue, and I think it does such a nice job of kind of showing how the fantasy is there as a fantasy. Like, he's not doing it because he wants to fulfill it. He's doing it because it's compelling. And then all of his sort of nicer instincts, like, yeah, she is in a hard spot. Like, she does need to get there. Like, I mean, I thought that was a really fascinating sort of inner window.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it shows exactly what in him too is the mark, his ability to kind of bend and sort of forgive and allow his kindness or naivete show through, along with his fantasy, along with wanting something to happen.
Right. And I like that she's a random hitcher. He's not, trolling the bars looking for somebody to cheat on his wife with. If she wasn't there, he wouldn't have been looking for her. Do you know what I mean? He just picked her up because she just was in his life.
Yeah. Which makes her a really, kind of scary figure, right? So here's this half-frozen woman in his truck, and flashing forward to the end of the story, her transformation is pretty astounding, right? The sort of violence with which she grabs him, and the description of her face contorting, right, is like, I think that taps into a real sense of taboo around picking up hitchhikers, right? And I wondered what the other readers of the story felt about that. Like when you sit down to read a story of hitchhikers, what are your expectations of it? Did this meet those expectations, complicate them in any way? What are you all thinking about hitchhikers?
She was enough tension for me. She was a device, right? Something has to happen. We're just in Paul's head, driving to Denali. It's kind of, what is that, right? There's nothing really like we're waiting for. She gets in. The hitchhiker is always the dramatic tension, right? That's always the risk. Will the hitchhiker be a murderer, or have a word of wisdom, or whatever, right?
Yeah. So I guess I think that's the one thing I am asking. Like, does this story cover that familiar ground in a way that's fresh and sustains us, right? Or is it too familiar?
I think she provided tension, but right when she got in the car, like right when he decided, I'm going to pick up this hitchhiker, maybe it's, again, my perception of hitchhikers, but I knew that they were going to be an antagonist of some sort. Like there was nothing good could happen if you pick up a hitchhiker. I think that's kind of what Tim was saying, where you could see the ending. On page 2, like you knew that,
See, I thought she was going to walk in the bathroom and ask him if she could perform a sexual act with him for money. That's all I thought. I thought she was just going to, try to get some dollars from him for a service.
Yeah. She was a great character.
Yeah.
She's great. But I saw her as once she started talking to Tuffy, I was like, she's tough herself.
Right.
I would say what does keep it fresh is that it's in Alaska and not in continental U.S. because it's on the outer layer. So, for instance, when I lived in Korea, I used to hitchhike all the time, and everything was safe because they didn't have the same Ted Bundy thing going on. It may have been unwise for them to pick me up, but it wasn't unwise for me to hitchhike. They don't know they're picking up a stranger from a different culture. But in Alaska, I feel like when I do hitchhike now in Korea, though, I usually try to flag down like workers and stuff because it just seems like a safer type of hitchhiking. I don't think that much, but in Alaska, if you were a plowman, I feel like you probably would pick up one every once in a while. I mean, it's so small. The chances of someone being a complete stranger is pretty slim.
She was.
Yeah, so I think that's what keeps it fresh is like you would probably pick somebody up, and then she gets in the car, you're like, oh, I don't know about this. I still feel like it's something bad's going to happen. But, the writer could easily avoid this by having her picking up a stranger in a slightly different setting. If he stops to get coffee, or if he stops to use the bathroom and someone's in the lobby, and someone says, hey, you're going that way, then they're not thumbing down. It's a slightly different context.
I think it's important that he's complicit, that like his decisions lead to that happening.
Yeah.
I had a question about motivation with her, and I don't know how to handle this based on the point of view, but so she gets picked up and then she gets him to take her somewhere and she makes the call and Tuffy shows up. And I'm just wondering, was the whole thing a setup? Was she looking for a mark and she found him? Or was she legitimately trying to hitchhike and realized he was a mark and so calls Tuffy and says, let's do this? Or I wasn't really sure how that came about. And it really had me wondering, and as I said, I don't know from point of view how you handle it, but it kind of distracted me too. Is this what she does? She hangs around looking for people who will pick her up and then she can take advantage of them, because that seems like really poor planning.
You know what? Yeah. Wait, who said that they were low level? Marion, was it you? It was talking about them just being low level, not very good gangsters.
That was me. They're terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
My read on it is that once she was just hitchhiking and then she saw him as a mark, because also there's something about needing his truck. If Tuffy showed up at that bar, he has to have a vehicle of some sort as well.
Right.
She did some calculations while they're driving in the car, like this guy's a putz and we could have this big truck for something. I don't know what that is. I don't think it was premeditated on her part.
I do feel like anyone who meets this guy after about an hour, you're going to try to figure out a way to scam him.
Please get
That's funny.
years.
But I want to jump in and say that I think I take this point though, and I think what I like about the story is the way her actions and the phone call to Tuffy suggest a whole other universe of like decisions, obligations, and this like social world of criminality. Like, I don't know what Wendy's deal is, but I do feel like it is not far off from like a system of petty crime that she's regularly involved in, right? So, you know what I mean? And that's what he's sort of like stumbled into. Like, she is that, you know, she is a trickster. She is, you know, the hitchhiker, right? It's a promise of one thing, it becomes this other horrible thing. And that's the arc of the story. But there's a way in which her relationship with Tuffy and her physical interaction with Paul suggests like such a complicated criminal life in Alaska that is fascinating to me. That's you know, I guess the part I wanted to champion about this story.
Do you think that, or I have a question about the title and what you think about the title and the line, you know, Wendy kind of I think reveals her character pretty clearly when she tells the Vulture story.
Yeah.
And you know a little bit more about Paul. And then the line where it says, ever since the Vulture conversation, Paul was okay with her. I thought, what did you think about that?
I think the entire premise of the Vulture conversation, I think it shows this theme that the author is trying to show that people don't change at all. Like, she's still a vulture. After everything happens, Paul is still a sad sack, and people are who they are and they don't change at all. I like the title.
I felt like it kind of goes right back to what Maureen had said about Alaska and how they have to operate there, kind of being so spread apart and very slim pickings of people to take advantage of, or sort of that other world that she was talking about. It made me think of nice visual imagery of what that could look like.
Mm-hmm. Guys, we've talked a long time about this one story. I don't feel like we're talked out, but I feel like our time is ticking. Should we keep talking?
I'm ready to vote.
There's 7 editors today.
Are people still on the fence? I mean, if you're on the fence, then
Ryan, are you on a device where they can message you, right? You can. So today's sound engineer is Ryan. Joe had other places to be, but we're the remote people are going. I know, Maureen, this is your first time. You're just gonna text yes or no in that message box.
Okay.
Okay. Does everybody vote that we're ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Oh, you should see the cringy faces going on in here. People want to keep talking.
Can I just say, for somebody who's on the fence, I think that having this much to talk about it is a vote in its favor. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but you know, it's generating a lot of conversation.
Marion, we did it again.
I know, it's perfect timing. The Abu Dhabi cuckoo clock.
That always kind of helps us too. Yeah. Okay, well, let's do it. Let's 1, 2, 3 vote. So you just tell us what you're. Whoa! Wait, don't vote.
When you're and you go to stick a knife in it to see if it's dry in the middle, how amazing that cake's going to be if you be patient enough, and how much it's going to suck if you take it out 5 minutes too soon.
So you're the kind of man who sticks in.
But it's worse if you let it burn. That's the problem.
I stick my bare hand.
So,
Who's against soft-centered chocolate cakes?
Well, I use like a steak knife.
does that make PBQ like the equivalent of an easy bake oven or something? Like, is the magazine somehow going to be cooking this sucker for
well, that's the question of where an easy bake oven was. This story put in an easy bake oven, or did it have A toothpick inserted. I use a toothpick. It's much more delicate of a hole.
Good God.
All right. Put a toothpick in there. If I'm gonna,
Who eats carbs anymore?
Okay, we're going to try it again. Here we go. Are we ready? We're voting. 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness.
What is it?
I think Denise threw a shoulder muscle out. She was having so many contortions voting. What's happening? Oh my goodness.
What?
It's in by a really narrow margin. It's
Okay.
4.
But it's in.
Three.
But it's in.
But it's
Wow.
in.
It's in.
But it's in.
4-3.
All
Yeah,
right.
I never reveal the vote, podcast listeners, loyal listeners, you know that I usually don't, but that's fascinating because of the way we've been talking about it, right? So yeah, there we are.
All right.
Congratulations, Alex Pickett. You know what? Let's make an editorial decision on the episode. Marion, Jason, Klingon, my Klingon council.
Okay.
What if we tell Alex, listen to our conversation and then see what Alex does? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, we know that the story's in, even if Alex chooses to not. Right? But maybe Alex will listen to the conversation and have a thought or two. And I think we should name this episode Prep H.
All right. Well, I think we should call it
No.
Preparation H is easier on the mouth.
Yes. That's the line. That's it. Very good.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, again, the story is available on our podcast pages, and stay tuned. We'll let you know if Alex should make revisions, and a different version will be up on our formal official pages. Meanwhile, read this story and let us know what you think on the Facebook page that corresponds with this event. Please sign up for our email list, even if you're not in the area. Send us a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we'll send you a podcast sticker, Slush Pile sticker. Tell your friends and neighbors, and keep reading.